I see a lot of D2C companies try to go after everything. My experience, if you try being a solution to everyone, you'll be a solution to no one. What's been helping us is education. When we first started, there's these big world tea conventions, and they were looking for someone to teach how to blend tea. No one wanted to do it. They're like, no, we don't want to give industry secrets. And my belief was, hey, if I can give away 85% of the secrets, then the chances are that people will pay for that last 15% because we built that level of trust and authenticity. This is a slow growth industry. We're not looking at 100 or 500% growth year over year. We're looking at 20% growth year over year. We have to be really diligent, very responsible with our cash flow. That growth phase requires a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of intention behind what we're doing.
You're spending real money to drive traffic to your site, but the truth is 98% of that traffic leaves without ever giving you an email. Meta knows who they are, but you don't unless you use Instant. Instant helps brands identify anonymous visitors so you can send more abandonment emails, build stronger retargeting audiences, and actually recover that lost revenue. Brands like Fate the Label saw a 4.5x boost in their abandonment flows. Masco increased Shopify revenue by over 15%. Third Love, Toys R Us, and the Oodie, these are all massive stores that use Instant to see an average ROI lift of 11.2x. They'll even guarantee you a 4x ROI or your money back. It only takes 15 minutes to set up and you'll start seeing results fast. If you're serious about getting more out of the traffic you're already paying for, now's the time to fix it. Get 50% off your first month at instant.one/DTC. That's instant.one/DTC. Steve, welcome to the D2C Podcast. Your business is the art of tea. That's probably one of the oldest trades in the world, the trading of tea. Is that right?
It is. In fact, tea, another word for tea is cha. So obviously you've heard of chai before. So there was a major port where tea would come from, and it was the port of cha. And so if it went from all throughout Asia, it was cha. If it went down to India or the Middle East, it was chai. And if it went to Europe, it was a different port, the port of tea. And so, but essentially initially it was carried by horseback and camelback, and so it was traded as a form of commerce, because you can drink it to help the weary traveler. You could enjoy it for its health benefits, or you could trade it for cash. So actually the first book ever written on tea was called Cha-Ching.
Oh, nice. Perfect.
So, yeah. And so cha meaning tea and ching mean like the way, right? So you have the way of tea, but that cha-ching really stems from tea as a form of commerce.
Well, let's go back into I always like to start with the hero's journey. Talk to me about why you built Art of Tea and a little bit more about your hero's journey with the business.
Yeah, man. So I'll go way back in time. So I'm in my late 40s now, and out of high school, I got a full paid scholarship to go to college. And about 6 months into college, my mom got diagnosed with brain cancer. So I dropped out of college. I moved out of state to move back in with her. And I took care of her. I was her primary caretaker. And we went from one Western brain surgeon to another brain surgeon, and nothing worked for my mom. And there's nothing wrong with Western medicine. It just didn't work for my mom. So she ended up passing away after 10 months. And it really woke me up. It got me thinking about health and wellness. And I want to learn about how to understand my body differently. I wanted to learn how to help my friends, my family, my community. But I didn't want to be a doctor, and I didn't want to be an acupuncturist and stick needles in people. And there's nothing wrong with either of those. It just wasn't my path. But I found a school in New Mexico called the Ayurvedic Institute, and it incorporated Eastern and Western medicine together. And I just dove into it, man. I mean, I fell in love with the alchemy of blending herbs and teas and botanicals, so much so that I was chosen as the only student advanced enough to work with the masters at my school on how to blend and source. So, I was responsible for sourcing. This is before the internet really took off. There was something called like Amma something where you can get books. But other than that, like you couldn't find anything online. So I was calling sources overseas and faxing people. And I remember I was on a phone call with a supplier overseas, and it was like $2 and something a minute. And I said, I need to order some ginkgo. And he said, do you want ginkgo on an eastern slope or a western slope next to a river? And I said, it doesn't matter. I was just thinking about the time, right? I just needed to get through the time. I said, I just need to order ginkgo. And he said, no, sir, it does matter. And you should come here yourself and experience it. So I was intrigued. I wanted to save up my money. I wanted to go to origin, right? I want to see how this stuff was grown and harvested. So I worked 4 different jobs. I waited tables. I cleaned houses. I worked at the school. I was in school full time. I did whatever I could. I saved my money. I got a backpack and I started traveling around the world to find the best teas and botanicals possible. So I had no idea that I was going to start a tea company. I just knew that I was a huge tea nerd, and I started bringing stuff back in my backpack and then passing it out to friends and family. And then I caught the attention of Wolfgang Puck and their team. And they said, Steve, listen, we know where our coffee comes from. We know where our fish and our kale comes from, but we don't know anything about where our tea comes from. So I leaned in on education, I leaned in on training, and started sourcing amazing teas for them, developed a whole tea program for their fine dining concepts and training programs around that. And then caught the attention of Caesar's Palace. Caesar's Palace said, hey, we heard about you as this like tea guy. And granted, we've been at this for 21 years. So this is like maybe 19 or 20. I was still out of my living room. And so they said, can you train a tea sommelier? So I said, sure. I started flying out there. They flew me out once a month for about a year. And I trained the first tea sommelier in the US. And fast forward, we do, part of our business is D2C on artoftea.com. And I wrote a book about it. It's a great book, a best-selling book that just published. It's called Art of Tea. And you can find it on Audible. You can find it on Amazon. And it became a best-selling book in several categories. It really talks about this journey and also creates a sense of ritual behind tea. And so now we do tea programs for everything from the Whitehouse to, we just found out we're doing the Supreme Court, which is crazy. And we do Google headquarters. We do a custom Slack blend, a lot of hotels, cruise lines. And then of course, for those that just are big tea fans and don't want to get the supermarket tea stuff, they go to our website at artoftea.com.
Yeah, that's what I was going to inquire about, because it's such I see it in the grocery aisle every week when I'm going through, and it's like there are these just incumbents that are there, and the story about how you kind of broke into that market. It sounds like how did Wolfgang Puck find you? Was it literally like you were in the same city, you had a bit of a reputation? Like, how did that happen?
Yeah, there were some contacts that I had that were working within the wine industry that said, Steve, you have to connect with the guys at Wolfgang. They'd love your story. They'd love what you're about. So I met with some of the decision makers, and initially, I drive out. I was in a Honda Civic, barely any tread on my tires. I drive out to Vegas, where some of their major decision makers were, and I would sit down with them and I'd meet with them, and it was quite a bit of expense to go out of the way to meet with them. But being kind of old school, I just felt like building relationships one at a time is really going to be key to our business. So I'd rather build a small tribe of few people that really believe in what we're doing and build on that than just try to go after everyone. I think I see a lot of D2C customers and companies rather that try to go after everything. My experience, if you try going and being a solution to everyone, you'll be a solution to no one. And so I kind of see it like a physician, right? If you're a physician and you're general practitioner, right? A doctor can make good money being a doctor as a general practitioner. But a physician that just handles, let's say, the right thumb, like the ability that they have to amass tremendous amount of respect and reputation, but also success in that industry just by specializing in one particular area. So that's kind of the route that we've taken, just really sourcing from the top 1% to 2% of all teas that are produced in the world and really being able to offer that as best as possible. In fact, our mission is to impact as many lives as we can through tea. So everything we do, every decision we make, from marketing to sales to hiring to vendors to customers, we really try to align that around that mission.
Talk to me about, I don't want you to necessarily trash Lipton, but maybe you do, but what's going on with retail teas or teas that are mass produced? Talk to me about the quality scale of tea, I guess.
Yeah, amazing. So if you're at a supermarket, you see a wall of tea, like you just described earlier. It can be confusing, right? And it's very much a race to the bottom. Do I go for something that has a product name that might service a particular function, or am I going for something on sale? Who knows how long it's been sitting in the supermarket shelf and what distributors and channels it might have gone through in order to get there, and the packaging of material in order to get on that supermarket shelf. And I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the Liptons of the world. I'm super grateful because they set a very particular standard and accessibility point. So for us, we kind of see it like a bag of unsalted, unflavored chips. So on the top of the bag, you get these beautiful uniform shapes. And as you work your way down to the bottom, you get powder or dust. So what ends up happening, Eric, is that as they're producing our teas in the factories at origin, the dust flies up in the air, falls on the ground. They sweep that in giant piles, and that's what's reserved for traditional supermarket tea bags. And what we source is hand harvested, hand picked, just the top 1% to 2% of all teas that are produced in the world. And then we're taking those ingredients and we're blending it by hand, we're packing it, and that's what goes out just as fresh as possible.
You mentioned that there's nothing wrong with Western medicine, and I feel like in the age that we're in right now, we're starting to see the cracks in a number of ways. With it has its place, but it's like I think people are getting more and more interested in different kinds of modalities around health. Talk to me about the role of tea in health.
Yeah, in my opinion, I think that the hospital system, the medical system, it's broken and it's breaking and it's cracking. Thank God it's there. Right. I mean, I'm so grateful that we have a system. You can go anywhere, pretty much any city in the country. There's going to be urgent cares, phenomenal doctors, phenomenal physicians, but there's still so many answers we don't have access to. And I think what's happening right now is people are starting to be a bit more aware of what they're putting into their body and seeing that their ecosystem, their body, how they're connected on this planet in terms of sunlight exposure, or what we might call today as needing red light therapy. Or needing proper amounts of water, needing proper amounts of nutrition. So this is where tea becomes that ultimate ritual. Regardless of age, gender, religion, demographics, it's leaves and water. But if you take the time with high quality leaves and curating that right water, that right amount of temperature and steep time, and being really mindful in that process, what ends up happening is you get so much more time back in that process. So if you just everyone gets like 10 minutes break in the normal work environment. So if you take 7 of those minutes, you get the leaves ready, you get the water ready, you get your cup ready, and you watch the leaves unfurl. You're being fully mindful in that process. And as you're sipping, just that level of attention by holding something that's warm and by being, feeling the liquid actually in your mouth and going into your system, that's one part of it. But the other part is tea has phenomenal traditional health benefits from polyphenols and flavonoids and catechins that they use this in tea ceremonies throughout Japan and Zen monasteries as a tool for focus, as a tool for meditation. So you can sit for hours on end being fully focused and fully aware with tea that you wouldn't necessarily be able to with coffee. And I love coffee from time to time, but in terms of people owning their health, it can really start with that simple, basic practice of high quality tea and that moment to yourself or that moment with a loved one around this simple ritual of tea.
When you decided to, because it sounds like you got into sort of wholesale and the kind of brand got built around what you were building out in wholesale. Was that accurate, or did it kind of?
I'm laughing because I didn't know how to build a website. I didn't know. So I took a course at SMC, Santa Monica Community College, and I failed the class, by the way, on how to build a website on Dreamweaver.
I did a similar thing, actually.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. So I built why did I build it? Because when I first started, and there's a lot of founders out there that could probably relate to this, my customer service was, and marketing and sales and AR and AP was my cell phone, like everything connected to my cell phone, and emails all went to me personally as well. And so I got a call at 10:30 at night from a waiter saying, "Hey, is this Art of Tea?" And I'm like, "Yes, yeah, how can I help you?" Like, well, am I calling your cell phone? I'm like, yeah, but it's cool. Like, what can I do for you? He said, well, there's some guests here at our restaurant that love your tea and they want to know where to get it. And I said, okay, tell them to go back to our website at artoftea.com. And that was a domain I didn't even own yet. It was $1,500 for the domain. And I'm like, man, I don't even know if I can afford $1,500 for the domain at that time. And so I told them, come back and it'll be for sale. So I built a website initially in Dreamweaver, and I started seeing some transactions, and I bought the domain, and I thought it was way too expensive. It was crazy. But, every time I've kind of pushed the envelope in terms of investing in the company, investing in people, investing in systems, it's always seemed to pan out.
And how did you pick? Because there's how many different varieties of tea are there? First of all,
So that's a great question. All true tea comes from one evergreen shrub called Camellia sinensis. So kind of think about it like coffee or wine, rather. So all wine comes from grapes, but depending on the type of grapes that you use, is it Cab, is it Merlot, is it Syrah, and then of course, like, is it coming from a particular region in the world? Are they leaving the skin on? Are they cooking it? Is it stored in an oak barrel or stainless steel container? So all these play into master crafting that delicious glass of wine. So in the same way as all wine comes from grapes, the same sort of thing happens with tea. All tea comes from Camellia sinensis. So you have white and green, oolong, black, and then another one called pu'er, which I'm drinking right now. It's kind of this funky fermented tea. And that's what creates tea. And there's different ways of producing it and different origins, and whether it's from Sri Lanka or India, North India, South India, is it from parts of China, Taiwan, Japan? But it has to come from Camellia sinensis in order for it to be a tea. So if it's not from Camellia sinensis, then it's not a tea. So for example, chamomile, I love chamomile. We source an incredible chamomile, and I could, take your whole show just talking about chamomile. But it's not a tea. Mint, also amazing, not a tea. It has to come from Camellia sinensis in order for it to be a true, authentic tea.
That's
So
interesting.
you now know more than like 99% of the world population when it comes to tea.
I love it. New thing I can be a snob about. It is super interesting. And I'm just on your website right now, and I'm like looking at what your bestsellers. So I'm looking at your white coconut cream tea, and just how beautiful it is. I didn't know tea looked that beautiful, and most of the time it's just you see a cool logo or a tea pouch, but to actually like highlight the look of the tea with the bright blues and oranges, it's quite stunning.
So yeah, we believe that all tea should have beauty, brains, and depth, just like what you look for in a partner, right? So it should be visually appealing, and that's part of the beauty behind it. It should have depth, meaning the taste, the flavor, and the overall profile. And the brains is the intelligence behind the blend. So based on my background in Ayurveda, we have to make sure that the ingredients mix well together. Just like if you were to have a party, you want to make sure you're inviting the right people that can all kind of blend together so there's no real conflicts in terms of personality. So the same thing with teas and ingredients. You want to make sure that they all blend and complement each other. And so that's, that mindfulness and that attention to detail goes into each blend that we create at Art of Tea.
Onto the growth side a little bit here. What's been maybe I think probably have wholesale and D2C kind of risen together since the beginning, or talk to me a little bit maybe about how you've grown the D2C side of the business.
Yeah, they've definitely complemented each other, right? So people will find us in a restaurant and then they go online, or people go online and then they refer it to a venue saying, "Hey, it's great that you guys are online, but I'd love it if you can be carried in Erewhon, or if you can be carried in, some like high-end, little market." And so we have to be intentional with that play. The D2C space, what's been helping us is education. Really lined up with wanting to be that leader and educator as best as possible. In fact, when we first started, there was these big world tea conventions, and they were looking for someone to teach how to blend tea. No one wanted to do it. They're like, no, we don't want to give industry secrets. And my belief was, hey, if I can give away 85% of the secrets, then the chances are that people will pay for that last 15% because we built that level of trust and authenticity. So I taught these, and they were sold out for 4 years in a row. In fact, there was a guy named David that came up to me and said, "Hey, you obviously know a lot about tea. Can you create the original foundation for my company?" I'll leave it at that. Good dude, really, really great concept and tea company. So we no longer do private label, but there was a period of time where we did do private label. So the D2C side, again, just really leaning in on education. So we have a whole how to become a tea expert on our website, our blog, or updates on, and then of course the book.
Yeah. When did you write the book?
So I wrote the book right before, I signed up right before COVID. I was really inspired by David Goggins, who wrote the book Can't Hurt Me. And the book is great, but the audiobook is incredible. And the way that he styled the book was very much podcast style. Someone else was reading it, but he would interject from time to time. He's like, "Let me tell you what the heck is going on here." You use other words, but so I just loved how raw and authentic his story was. And he went through a hard time, and I think we've all gone through challenges in life. I've been on my own basically since I was 14. So I there's some good story and narrative there. And my team was saying, Steve, you really should write a book. You really should put something together. And I'll tell you where it's been really helpful, Eric, is not just on the marketing side for new people and new customers to learn about us. But boy, when we hire new people and we say, this is the story, this is the narrative, it adds something. It gets our tribe even that much tighter together and that much more meaningful behind the impact that we're looking at making in this world.
How big's your team now?
Close to 45 people at this point.
And what would you say at this point in the business is the most challenging component of it?
There's a lot of challenges. We don't do this stuff as founders because it's easy, right?
Yeah. And you may have not done it if you knew how hard it was going to be when you started.
Yeah. Communication continues to be that number one thing that we need to, as humans, continue to improve on. And getting everyone really aligned. Like as part of us as founders, we need to cheerlead, we need to support, we need to cast that vision and let people know, hey, this is where we're going. And just as you think you were super clear and you detailed that and everyone's tracking with you, guess what? You got to do it again. And you got to do it again and you got to do it again. And so, that level of excitement and enthusiasm and vision painting is super crucial in our roles as founders.
What about logistics? You've probably got ingredients coming from all over the world. Talk to me a little bit about the logistics challenges of this business.
It's also an agricultural product, so we might be dealing with chamomile shortages or like our mint. We have the most phenomenal mint in the world. We could easily get mint from Egypt or from parts of China, and great mint. But our mint comes from Oregon and Northern California. And what we do, Eric, is we literally buy 2 years in advance before they even plant it. They don't plant it till like a year out. And it's so incredible that, even if they have like crop failure, we only get like 75%, or an abundance of crop and we get like 110%, we'll take it. But our eyes literally water when the mint comes in. That's how fresh it is. And so for us, sourcing the best possible ingredients has been a really key survival mechanism for us and way of continuing to build our tribe and our audience and our community around what we're doing. You can't fool people when it comes to quality. You have to continue to win them on really great quality experience in the consumer packaged goods space.
And you need to get them to buy again and again. And it's beautiful when your product is such a ritual-based product, right? Because people take so much, the way you described the meditative aspect of the product is probably, super important to people's kind of continuing to buy it. You also have a tea club or a subscription program. Talk to me about that piece in the business.
Yeah, the loyalty program is important. The subscription important. There's two basic proponents, actually three. So the first is that ritual. So we're so addicted to this thing, the phone, right? It's such a mind zapper and time zapper, and it's affecting sleep. It's affecting all these other things. So being able to own our time back. What do most people want? Founders, humans, right? It's freedom. And I believe that taking those moments out with tea gives you that sense of freedom. It's a paradox. You don't have time to make tea, but when you make time, you actually end up getting so much more time back. So this is part of that ritual process. In terms of our subscription piece, 2 years in a row, we were voted by Food and Wine as the number one tea subscription program out there. So we've invested a lot in terms of the technology and in terms of the systems and in analyzing what's working and what's not working on our platform at artoftea.com. And the third and final is our loyalty program. And that's something that we pay a lot of attention to. We want to really spoil our loyalty customers as much as possible through winning, through gamifying, through making it fun and engaging. And we want to survey and listen to what we're doing right and where we're fucking up and what we can do better and differently.
The other thing that I noticed when I did some ChatGPT research on the Art of Tea was that you guys have a mobile app. Tapcart's a big friend of the podcast.
Okay,
I'm curious, how has the app played into your retention strategy?
Apple just did a major update. right? And there's theories behind why they're doing it, why they're continuing to put more and more gates around their platform. And one is they want to own the retention piece as much as possible. They want to basically strip away as much advertising dollars for some of the big players. So that way, eventually, I don't have a crystal ball here, but eventually they may start pushing out their own advertising mechanisms. And so in the meantime, push notifications is a way to continue to really help make sure that you're staying engaged with your customers as much as possible. So yeah, TapCart's great. They feature us on their website as a case study. We've been with them for several years. And what I like about it is we don't we don't get a lot of problems with it. It's fairly plug and play. They've customized some things around education for us that they haven't thought of before. And they're also continuing to innovate and share ways that we can continue to use the app as best as possible here too.
We're always this year on the podcast talking about top of funnel awareness and consideration building efforts. And it sounds like you've got a really diversified stack when it comes to that, from the restaurants, from whatever you're doing in advertising, from your loyalty programs. I also see a note here about public relations and events. You were talking about the story, how important, the book that you wrote is, but the story of the brand. Have you been able to leverage PR to amplify this story to bring new attention to the brand?
Yeah, so part of that is engagement, right? So I'm going to be in New York later this week doing a blending class. So sort of think of like Cold Stone Creamery, where you kind of break up the different ingredients and it can be made for you. So we'll do these fun sort of engagements. So if you're in Miami, we're sponsoring Miami Open. We've never done anything like this before, and so we're leaning in. One of the things that was recommended to me by Brian Lee, who's just a world-class, just an incredible human being and definitely big in the subscription space. And I've learned a lot from him. He shared with me, he said, Steve, one of the things that you should do is once a year have a freestyle budget for your marketing team to be able to do something wild and crazy. Set a cap. It doesn't have to be, above your belly button, as I say. You shouldn't jump above your belly button, but like something where it's going to drive the needle. And we've had major failings in that. And we've had some really fun wins around that. And so this Miami Open is going to be a way for us to engage with a new audience in person and test out what this offline-online experience could look like.
I have made it a personal goal this year to go to a tennis tournament in the United States. I was eyeing up, I think it was in Indian Wells, the one in Arizona, but maybe I'll have to attend Miami Open. Will it be iced tea or will you be doing hot and cold teas?
We'll be doing hot and cold. We'll be doing matcha, like a mixed drink with matcha. We'll be doing iced teas, and we'll be doing some hot teas as well. There's, the biggest issue for us is there's a lot of people that have no idea that we exist. They might be huge tea drinkers. Maybe they've heard of us, maybe they haven't. So how do we break through that obscurity and make that impact, knowing that once people try our teas, they fall in love with it. But because we're not at the supermarket level in terms of quality and also in terms of just ease of access, it means that we have to put more effort into reaching customers where they're at. And so sometimes it's doing these sort of wild adventures and seeing how we can connect with people. But I'd love for you to be my guest. If you're open to coming to Miami Open, man, it'd be so awesome to hang out with you there.
That would be. And I could just see that demonstrative aspect being really important because there probably is a whole category of tea drinkers like Folgers drinkers in, the US or all over the world that are just drinking coffee for its basic, properties, or people are drinking Lipton. So exposing people to this other meditative, like high quality aspect of tea and then what you get out of it is probably really important. You were saying education, and I guess this in-person aspect probably really helps.
Yeah, we're really excited about it. It's going to be a new adventure for us. And tea is such a tactile experience. And if Brian Lee can, sell shoes online and get people to somehow connect with shoes online, maybe there's something we can do with tea online and get people more connected that way in some capacity.
Have you done much, I almost see like a master class or something, like, have you done much video content around this like deep tea expertise?
Yeah. So during the beginning of COVID, because we were doing trainings, we'd fly out all over the country, and even in the Maldives, I was doing, hands-on trainings. There's an Art of Tea house in the Maldives, or Japan, where like the Peninsula Hotel, we created like a signature blend for cherry blossom season in Japan, in Tokyo. or Singapore for some of the beautiful cafes that they have there. There's so much that we weren't able to do in person and I know that people were contacting us saying, hey, we still want to learn, we still want to grow, we still want to get connected. So we created a level 1 and level 2 how to become a tea expert program on our website at artoftea.com. And that's really helped create more engagement.
Super cool. And then you've got a quiz as well. I always love when people are incorporating quizzes because you've got so many, because people, I guess a lot of people don't know necessarily what tea they like if they're not tea experts. They might just, you've got all the different sort of flavor profiles down the side, and that kind of helps. But talk to me about the role of the quiz. How many people who buy the product go through the quiz?
A lot. And I'll tell you where it's helpful is you come to your website, you're ordering for your coworker, your best friend, your mother-in-law, and you're not quite sure what to order. This quiz helps guide you through that best practice. Or let's say for yourself, you want to get off coffee and you want to start to look for something. Maybe you're more of a fruity guy or more of a, like more cream or vanilla. So this helps kind of curate and guide you down that pathway.
I wanted to ask about blends, and just when you say blends, is that literally like just how much of tea versus, and like do the teas have flavoring elements built into them, the ones that have flavors, or are they just different profiles of the same tea plant?
Yeah, it's an amazing question. So the first question is blends. So what's a blend? So a tea blend versus a tisane blend. So a tea blend, again, has camellia sinensis in it. It means that we'll take, let's say, green tea, and we'll take lemongrass and mint and rose petals, and we'll come up with a blend, and we'll play with the different ratios to extract as much natural flavor profile out of it as possible. In some cases, we'll actually use natural essences. So what is a natural essence or a flavor that we use? I can't speak for all companies that might be using flavors or essences, but we'll take, let's say, mango, for example. And there's aromatic compounds that come out of a mango. When you smell a mango, that has a certain fragrance. So what we do is we have those compounds isolated in an ethyl alcohol base, and we apply that ethyl alcohol onto the leaves, and the ethyl alcohol dissipates, and what's left is the aromatic compounds of the mango that's just naturally left onto the leaves. So it has sort of this soft, and it's probably like 1% or 2% of that's actually on some of the leaves, where we'll dictate if it has natural essence or flavors. Or in some cases, we'll use like bergamot oil, like actual oil derived from the bergamot to make Earl Grey. So it's not like a bergamot flavor or a lemon flavor, it's actual true bergamot.
I also just noticed you have a Paddington in Peru. So there's tea partnerships happening here as well. My daughter just went to go see her Paddington in Peru for a second time. What an amazing film franchise to be associated with. Or even maybe it's the books. I'm not even sure. Talk to me a little bit about how that partnership came about.
Yeah, some of these, thank God. I don't know. Like, it's just been, I feel like we've been so fortunate. Just we've had some great success with Sony. We've had some great success with Warner Brothers with having them approach us to see if it makes sense doing some sort of partnerships. So we did a special blend for Dune. We've done
Spice.
Yeah, we did a spice blend. Yeah, and that was last year. We did a spice blend, and that was super cool. We've done one for Outlander, which is a TV show series, because there's a medicine woman on there. And so these partnerships are really interesting. There's one that came out of just a couple of years ago, where it was the State Department reached out to us saying that the Whitehouse wants to create signature blends that can be gifted on behalf of the White House that represent the United States. And we ignored it. We were like, this is spam, right? Because how many Prince from Nigeria emails have you gotten?
Yep,
And
totally.
so we're like, this is BS. Like, don't, whatever. So then they followed up like, hey, yeah, we're trying to reach you. Can you? And here's the First Lady's signature. Here's the state. Here's the White House logo. Can you do this? And so we're like, okay, I guess this is serious. And so we actually created 3 unique blends on behalf of the White House. So that was awesome. But someone told me, this stuff doesn't. On one hand, it can happen. On the other hand, boy, this is 21 years in the making. But I learned from, I believe it was Brian Tracy. He's great legend in the sales space. And he said that when you're taking off in your business, you need it sort of like a plane. When a plane is taking off a runway, you put the gas in full gear. And it stays in full gear until you reach a specific altitude, a cruising altitude, and then you can pull back. So, but you need to know when you can pull back and when you need to go full out, and at least when you're starting out. And for us, we're not, even though we play with tech and it's, we have an incredible tech stack when it comes to our website, but this is a slow growth industry for us. We're not looking at 100 or 500% growth year over year. We're looking at 20% growth year over year. And so with that in mind, we have to be really diligent, very responsible with our cash flow. And, we have to know that this is something that compounds. And so that growth phase requires a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of intention behind what we're doing.
It's just a great story of, taking literally one of the oldest industries in the world and through your passion and perseverance, really cracking it in a unique way. Like, are you even in retail, or is it all wholesale and D2C?
We're in a little bit of retail. So if you're in LA and you've heard of, I'm sure everyone on social media has heard of Erewhon before. So we are in Erewhon, and we're in a few other Erewhon style concepts, but we've deliberately not tapped into Whole Foods and into Sprouts, and just because of alignment with our philosophy of the quality of teas that we're sourcing. We don't want it sitting on a supermarket shelf for a long period of time. We really want to make sure that education and high quality is at the forefront of everything that we're doing.
What are your goals with the business, I guess, in the next 2 to 3 year time frame?
Yeah, it's a great question. So first, I started this company with no investors. Actually, that's not true. I had Aunt Visa and Uncle MasterCard, like literally a credit card for $1,000 and another credit card for $1,500, and that's how I started. And my wife was, just kept me so diligent with making sure that we're paying it off every single month. And so managing cash flow has been very important for our business. I'm going to be 50 very soon. And so I'd say over the next 2 to 5 years, maybe even shorten that 2 to 4 years, we're going to be looking at bringing on a just great alignment, whether that's a partnership, whether that's a investor that can really continue to help usher us in as more of a global presence, but it's got to be alignment. We've done such a diligent job with making sure that our team is well taken care of, that we have a phenomenal company culture. So whatever we do moving forward, we want to make sure that continues to stay true and positive. We can make sure that we have proper alignment in that respect. But I know that, sorry, just say one more thing. I know that I'm on this planet only for a short period of time, and there's got to be other people out there, a lot more people out there that can do this better and differently than me. And it would be the responsible thing for me to eventually pass that baton on to someone else that can do it better and different than me.
Amazing. Well, I want to thank you for coming on the D2C podcast today. You put the T in DTC today. If people want to follow your journey, where do you suggest that they potentially reach out? Somewhere like LinkedIn?
Yeah, LinkedIn is probably where I get the most engagement. Or otherwise, you can follow us on Instagram at Art of Tea LA.
Nice. And if you had any closing words for entrepreneurs in our audience who are looking to follow in your footsteps or build out their own business, do you have any other final words of encouragement or advice?
Yeah. The one that continues to stand out for me on a day-to-day basis is if it freaks you out and you're excited about it, but you're just a little bit more excited than being freaked out, then you're doing the right thing.
The obstacle is the way. A little bit of stoicism there.
Well, but you have, the excitement has to be a little bit higher. Like if you're more freaked out than excited, then question yourself. But if you're even like a fraction a bit more excited, the chances are your gut is also telling you, hey, yeah, this is scary, but we got this. We got this. And if you can look in the past and realize that, I'm going to get a little esoteric here, right? That the universe, the creator, whatever you want to call it, was there for you in the past. It is there for you, for the billions of cells that are vibrating in your body right now, then the chances are that same force of life and energy will continue to be with you as you progress in this world.
Thanks so much for listening to today's episode. If you're not a subscriber to our newsletter, you can do that right now at directtoconsumer.co. I'm Eric Dick, and this has been the D2C Podcast. We'll see you next time.